Welcome to this program on online tutoring and skills and competency of online tutors. In one of the introductory programs that I had presented, I had underlined that for online teaching and learning, or for that matter e-learning, or even for blended learning, we need 4 components: design, development, delivery, and evaluation. All the components that I had underlined would be presented in the series of programs that we are targeting for the MOOC courses. As you know, this course comprises of 4 credits, and the online tutoring and skills and competencies of online tutors is one of the programs which comprises of almost 1.5 hours of study, 30 minutes of video program, online resources, quizzes, and so on and so forth. What I'll be presenting in this program is, I will revisiting the online teaching and learning process very briefly, and also underline in detail the online tutoring process, and therefore what the online tutors, as distinguished from classroom teachers, or for that matter as distance teachers, would have competencies and skills that would better facilitate for effective learning of online students. As you see on the screen, that there has been a traditional debate on distance education between independence and interaction. To what extent we can provide autonomy to the learners, and therefore independence in their self-study, in their own articulation, and therefore internalization by themselves. Also, there is a need, of late it was realized that there is a need that we need to provide learning environments and design learning environments such that they would be engaging in meaningful and effective interaction. So therefore, independence and interaction both are essential in studying at a distance. Professor Bore Holmberg had underlined that there must be a real interaction, there would be simulated interaction in the old traditional distance learning. The real interaction is when the students and the tutor or the academic counselor, they interact at the study center or the learning center. We call that as counseling, but at times there could be also lecturing, there could be presentations, there could be discussions, there could be interaction among students, and so on and so forth. In fact, the teacher may not be present in the tutorial where the students are interacting themselves. One of the students could also facilitate as a mentor or facilitator within the tutorial session. This is what is called real interaction. The real interaction could also take place if there is a two-way video conferencing, or even for that matter by email, or a Google group discussion, or online chatting, or even a telephone tutoring, which happens largely in Canadian Open University. So this is about real interaction. The simulated interaction is through well-designed self-learning materials. The teacher, or the online teacher in this case, or online tutor, or for that matter the distance teacher, is built into the text, or built into the video, built into the audio, and so on and so forth. Any kind of resources, the teacher is built into that to facilitate effective self-study of the learners. So therefore, interaction that takes place both within or through the resources, in our case online resources, and also physical interaction. And therefore, I would rather suggest and plead for that there should be blended learning context even if we are teaching exclusively any program online. So therefore, the simulated interaction as well as real interaction can take place. So friends, to conclude this point, that there is a need to design even online learning environment to facilitate independence, and therefore independent self-study, self-reflection, self-meaning making, and self-creation of knowledge within an individual learner. There is also a need that they interact in real time, otherwise also asynchronous interaction, that we will see both synchronous and asynchronous interaction, that they must interact to learn from each other, to negotiate meaning, and therefore finally accept what is the meaning for one's own individual's interest and cognitive structure, and therefore internalize that, and therefore transformative learning takes place. The types of interaction I have listed down 4, and basically there are 4 interaction types. There could be many more sub-interaction groups that one could consider while designing an online learning environment and online learning resources and teaching learning. One is a learner interface or learner technology interaction. 2, the learner content interaction. 3, learner instructor or the facilitator or the online mentor or the tutor interaction. And finally, learner interaction. The first about learner interface or technology interaction. We basically have selected Moodle as a platform, online platform, and designed that for our postgraduate diploma in e-learning, for which I will present a case study later. The Moodle platform provides for all kinds of 4 types of interaction, and these 4 types of interaction have been well designed into the Moodle open source platform. This is an open source platform. You need not pay for that, meaning thereby this is not proprietary. If you take a Blackboard or a WebCT, for instance, they are proprietary, you pay for that. But for Moodle, except for investment in their redesigning and running the program, which is a minor cost, we do not at all spend any money to design our technology platform called Moodle, and so also the learning design or the learning management system, LMS. So the technology has to be very simple, I must submit, that the students must have control. This is very extremely essential, that the students must have control to play with technology. The technological buttons or artifacts would facilitate the students such that they would easily navigate through the resources, teaching learning process, as well as assessment strategies, and so on and so forth, including access to additional resources and come back to their home page where they have been. There have been RSS feeds and many other strategies available to us that we can design that can very well come back to the home page. And I must also submit that the home page as well as the navigated pages must be extremely simple. There is a saying, you must have seen a TV advertisement which says, keep it simple, stupid. Meaning thereby, keep it simple. Teaching learning is very simple. If you make it simple, there would be effective interaction among students, within the students, and among themselves, and learning would be more effective. If we make it complex, which many of us, without knowing that we are making it complex, we do make it complex, and therefore we inhibit effective student learning. Therefore, my submission would be that we should keep the technology design as simple as possible, and therefore teaching learning at a distance, or in this case online teaching learning, becomes very simple. Meaning thereby we provide entire autonomy and control to the learners, to the online learners themselves, that each one must find it easy to navigate in the process. If there is any who finds it difficult, we must also reconsider to redesign the online platform. 2, the learner content interaction. The content that we provide, which could be open education resources, which could be our own design resources provided as PDF files, or our own resources provided as interactive multimedia files, print, audio, video, graphics and animation all joined together, even database joining together, would facilitate students to navigate very easily. Even if it is open education resources or web links or hyperlinks or our own design materials or redesigned open education resources in whatever way, or reusing learning objects, or even reusing the learners' resources undertaken by them in the previous semesters or previous years. All these must be designed in such that the students would find it very difficult, or the learners would find it very easy to interact among themselves, learn by oneself and interact among themselves. There are 2 kinds of interaction that I have listed here, synchronous and asynchronous. In case of synchronous, for instance, the teleconferencing or interactive radio or even telephone tutoring. So in all these, the interaction is real time. If you are doing a Yahoo chatting or a Google group chatting, for instance, the chat itself is synchronous. Synchronous would simply mean that it is real time. I must distinguish synchronous from what is called contiguous. In a classroom situation, the students and teachers are face to face and they are also real time. So therefore, classroom teaching is synchronous as well as it is contiguous. In distance teaching, and more particularly in online teaching learning, it is synchronous but real time, but it may not be contiguous. The students and teachers are certainly at a distance. Even if one is sitting in the next room, but interacting at a distance would simply mean that they are not contiguous. The assumption is that they are not face to face. So synchronous teaching learning must be designed into the online program, so also asynchronous. I will distinguish between synchronous and asynchronous in the manner that in synchronous teaching learning, one is in real time interacting at the same point of time with the tutor, with the learners, with the resources, and so on and so forth, and learning. But I would plead for that there must be a significant amount of asynchronous teaching and learning built into the online program, thereby that the learners find individual space and the space within the learning group to interact, to reflect, and therefore learn better and learn more effectively, and the quality of learning and deeper learning increases with asynchronous, well-designed asynchronous teaching learning environments. So friends, both synchronous and asynchronous teaching learning must be built into the online program. There is a third aspect of learner, instructor, or the facilitator, e-moderator, or the tutor interaction, or the e-mentor interaction. Learner-instructor interaction in online learning could be of many varieties, and particularly when we are considering blended learning, it is important that we build into significant component of face-to-face counseling or tutoring or facilitating into the online teaching learning program. The face-to-face component could be for a specific purpose. The purpose could be, more importantly, that when there is a hands-on experience. For instance, in online teaching and learning, the students might be introduced to a variety of open source tools that for audio, video, graphics, animation, resource sharing, communication, interaction, and so on and so forth, and even for assessment. To build an assessment rubric, one might also be facilitated to appreciate and understand that how the online assessment rubric will facilitate individual students, meaning thereby that they should not be inhibited by the technological interface that we bring into the system, and therefore I would repeat that let us keep it simple. So in learner-instructor interaction, there are also two types, synchronous and asynchronous. The synchronous could be face-to-face if we were building face-to-face interaction into the online program. In case of a blended learning, and especially for hands-on experiences, that face-to-face interaction is extremely important. Telephone could be used for that matter. The chat could also be used. Teleconferencing, as well as interactive radio and interactive video. All these would be facilitating. These are synchronous, and there could be charts built into that, but charts are instant, and instant brings in immediate reaction, and if a chart is followed by some kind of asynchronous communication with certain pause, certainly this would lead to more effective learning, because students will find space to reflect on what is charted and what is interacted, and therefore would come back with significant individual meaning built into the group learning process. So all the students bring their own meaning into the process. There will be deliberation and discussion, and therefore online teacher or online mentor has a responsibility to appreciate and understand individual meaning given by each individual student to the discussion of the topic that is going on, and therefore facilitate their understanding better. I will come little later to this. This is what is called metacognitive skills. The online mentor must facilitate the metacognitive skills of each individual students and therefore group as a whole, as also bring in the mentor's own interpretation and therefore enrich the meaning making. And finally, whatever comes out would be internalized by each student, as we know, and I would underline that even twins learn differently. So even two individuals, even twins from the same family, they perceive things differently, they interpret differently, and therefore they learn differently. They have different abilities, they have different cognitive structure, and their own perception would facilitate the way they would like to look at things and their worldview, and they would learn very differently. There might be similarities, but there would also be differences. So also a group of students who are studying at a distance or who are studying online at a distance. So therefore, friends, I would simply sum it by saying that in an online teaching learning environment, both synchronous and asynchronous components need to be built into. Asynchronous includes, as listed there, email, discussion forums, and fax or facsimile, and so on and so forth. So both synchronous and asynchronous need to be built into the system. What an online tutor needs to develop competencies and put into practice very effectively is expertise in both synchronous and asynchronous design of the learning environment, interaction within that, teaching and learning within that, as also making assessment strategies and assessment rubrics which will combine both synchronous and asynchronous learning. And finally, friends, there is a learner-learner interaction. The learner-learner interaction could also be both synchronous as well as asynchronous. In synchronous face-to-face and otherwise teaching learning, face-to-face, contiguous, at a distance, online, non-contiguous. In both the situations of synchronous learning, for instance, the self-help groups, that the students formulate their own groups with facilitation by the mentor, go on deliberating, working out projects and so on and so forth, experimenting things, and come back to the tutor or to themselves in the online learning platform and start interacting and contributing and enriching. 2, there would be chat groups, teleconferencing, interactive radio. All these are synchronous. So the learners would be interacting with the learners. As much as possible, one should try not to bring in all these technologies and processes into the online learning platform. This will mess up the whole system. The point is, the technological interfaces and frameworks need to be very selectively used for the type of program or the content or the concept that one is presenting or teaching. So therefore, it will be a judicious mix of, or it could be simply, to put it simply, it could be eclectic, to bring in the most effective teaching learning that the tutor would like to consider or the online facilitator would like to consider. My submission here would be that there might be a question in your mind that whether the online facilitator is the same person who would be designing and developing and presenting the program. My submission would be that the online facilitator is certainly the program coordinator. If the program coordinator is the online facilitator, it enriches the teaching learning process. But it could so happen, and it generally happens, that the online mentors and tutors are not necessarily the program coordinators. The program designers have oriented the online tutors to proceed, and online tutors could be present anywhere, any part of the world. Sitting here, one can teach for United States students or even Canada or Africa or elsewhere. The point is that all these tutors conform to a standard of competency set and the level of achievement, and therefore conforming to those standards, one would simply expect that the online tutors are doing their job very well. The only point is that as the students, even twins differ, as the students differ, so also the teachers and tutors. And the difference between tutors doesn't necessarily bring in any constraint to teaching and learning or effective learning by the students. Rather, on the other hand, the differences between tutors would enrich the online teaching learning process, except one underlying principle that they must conform to the framework within which they are teaching, and they must also conform to the standards or the level of quality of teaching and learning. So friends, learner and learning interaction, both synchronous and asynchronous, need to be designed into the program. Now let me tell a few words about the level of interaction, because simple interaction has no meaning unless one consciously builds interaction into or builds in high level of discourse into the interaction. High level of discourse would mean two things. For individual learner, a high level of thinking, high level of critical thinking, high level of innovation, and high level of creativity. But before that, as I had presented in the first program, that one must not only learn, internalize, remember, but also try to make meaning, and therefore try to test it in situations, to put into practice, and therefore come out with validation, and therefore it would be facilitating for students to assimilate better. So if we recall that properly, you could link that to what is being presented in interaction here. So at one level, there could be that the students are left to themselves and there is no interaction. If there is no interaction, the students are left to themselves, and there will be a lot of frustration among students that as to what extent or whatever they are learning, whether they are in the right path. So therefore, it is important that other students interact with them, they correct themselves, they moderate themselves, and finally the online tutor finds it easy that when there is more interaction, the tutor finds it easy to help them reflect better and learn better and moderate better. If there is no interaction, it is extremely difficult on the part of the online moderator, the tutor, to interact with the students, and therefore one of the skills that the online tutor must have is to design a proper, easy, effective and appropriate interactive platform, as also including content and so on and so forth, as also facilitate each student and induce each student to interact. This is a skill which is extremely essential, and the online tutor at times has to be very patient with each students to let them interact. There may be many reasons why the students are not interacting, not that they are not intelligent, but the point is there might be many inhibitions: gender, culture, language, these three, and motivation and attitude. These four are very important considerations that the online tutor must consider for each student separately and try to address, and therefore there is a need that you need to, as an online tutor, you need to interact with each student separately, as also because there might be a constraint that the students would find it best when they have their protected online web environment, as also there is a group environment site. So both these sites are extremely essential to design in an online program. Please do remember this. This is extremely essential, that there must be an interactive site for each individual student, protected by them, and which is password protected, only they can access, but you as an online tutor, you can equally access all the students' personal websites. Two, that within the platform there must be a group learning a web platform, and of course all these are cloud, they would be interacting among themselves and as and when you feel like. When students and you negotiate that they would be protected for this point of time or this person, and there will be group interaction, this needs to be negotiated. So negotiating ability on the part of the online tutor, as also the ability to induce each student, considering, as I repeat, considering their gender, language, culture, and attitude and interest. So starting from a low interaction or no interaction to an outstanding interaction. Outstanding interaction doesn't necessarily mean that learning has been very effective, and no interaction doesn't mean that learning has been very ineffective. The point here is that of course no interaction is not essential, is not necessary, but starting from a low interaction to an outstanding interaction across the program, sometimes there can be low interaction when the students are dormant and students are doing their own tasks and there is no need for an interaction. And at times there will be an outstanding interaction. At the time of outstanding interaction, the online tutor will be it will be most taxing on the part of the online tutor, and therefore one has to handle and low interaction or no interaction up to outstanding interaction. Now, why interaction is needed? This is extremely essential, that of course as we saw in the first PowerPoint, that tutoring and online moderating would need some kind of interaction, even if there is a possibility and there is a need, of course, that there must be independence. So one has to strategize between independence and interaction. Insofar as independence is concerned, that one has to design resources such that one would be standing independently with full control and full confidence. And if you could develop metacognitive skills in students, the students would be in a better position to handle themselves and therefore take charge of their own learning, which generally doesn't happen. What is important is that we must develop confidence in learners and facilitate to identify their own ability, which is already there, and put most effectively into practice into their own learning, self-learning as well as group learning. In case of interaction, we must ensure that the learners have full control among themselves. The program is adapted by the learners find it comfortable the way the program has been designed, the content has been designed, the interaction has been designed, and the assessment rubric has been built into the program. There must be participation and communication, and there should be meaningful communication. Interaction without any purpose, interaction without any direction, interaction without any moderation, interaction without any threading is wasteful. So therefore there must be meaningful and very effective and productive interaction, and therefore the role of the instructor or the online teacher or the moderator, the skill that they need to is very important, that they have to design interaction such, guide students such that there must be meaningful interaction. So threading and facilitating each thread and coming out with comments, summaries, and further leading to further interaction. The online tutor must also facilitate that the learners form what is called a community of learners. A community of professionals, in case of professional education, that they are committed to their own profession, and therefore the kind of program or the certificate or diploma that they are studying for a particular skill or particular set of competencies which lead to the certificate or the diploma, the learners are extremely comfortable to form a community. What is important here is, and I would like to bring in, recall a PowerPoint that I have presented in the first program, is that there must be congruence between offline and online learning, or offline and online learners. The learner at the same point of time is offline while interacting online. So what is important is that we must have a surrogate representation of the workplace practice or the professional practice or the community of practitioners in the online learning program, and therefore the resources, activities, and assessment strategies, including interaction, that are designed by the online tutor or facilitated by the online tutor must conform to, must akin to the real professional practice that one is in. So the professional practice which is real must be represented in the online in a surrogate way, that there must be an indirect representation of online. So therefore the content, especially the activities that one builds into the program, must be equivalent to the professional practice in real context. And finally, knowledge of others' perspective. And this is what is called constructivist learning, that one has to bring in one's own perception, one's own meaning into the discourse, as also other learners. So if there are 20, 50, 100, 500 learners studying in online learning, all 500 will bring in 500 different ways of looking at things and 500 different meanings. And therefore it is extremely essential on the part of the online tutor or the moderator, and this is a very important skill, is that he or she would recognize and understand and appreciate all the interpretations that have been, or meanings that have been given by the learners, and therefore thread them and find out what could be the best representation, and which could be more critical, more problematic, problem solving, and which is more constructivist, and which is certainly more innovative and more creative. So friends, these functions need to be very carefully considered by the online teacher or tutor. Interaction versus independence, as you see that from the screen, that some of the like face to face, there could be a whole lot of interaction, whereas independence in online learning could be extreme. So this face to face, which brings in highest level of interaction, and self study, which brings in highest level of independence, they need to be combined together, and the range of interaction to independence is presented on your screen that you can study by yourself. The conversation or discussion that we present, there should not be much of monologue, there should be dialogue, there should be dialectic, they must be built into from logically from point of view of simple to complex, and there must be construction of meaning. The meaning making by each individual learner is very important, and this is a skill by the online tutor, that one has to induce each individual to come up with whatever meaning that they have in their own mind insofar as that particular concept is concerned. The assessment strategies need to be considered by the online tutor. There could be computer marked assignment, tutor marked, online tutor marked, online computer marked assignments. Discussion forums need to be evaluated. Online presentations by the individual students need to be considered in the assessment strategy. Online projects or individual or group projects. There could be e-portfolios, there could be diaries, reflective journals, and so on and so forth. All these need to be considered, designed such that the online tutor needs to facilitate all of these, facilitate for students effective presentation, effective learning, and also facilitate developability that one could very impartially and objectively evaluate and assess each student's performance. And each student's performance finds a place in the online rubric, assessment rubric, that one individual student can see for himself or herself. If there is a need, that there is an agreement that the students among themselves can see that who has done how better or how worse for that matter. So friends, finally, this is your final PowerPoint. What finally you see is that how the online learners should be supported. The online learners should be supported from the point of view of technology, from the point of view of teaching, learning and metacognitive skills, from the point of view of resources including online library resources, and finally from online counseling. As you see on the PowerPoint, that students need to be facilitated, and therefore the online tutor needs to stress upon and therefore develop ability or the skills or competency to facilitate students that and provide support to the students. They find it easy to navigate information, and there must be help desk, call centers, all need to be built into, and sometimes there can be a mass or individual mobile SMS facilities built into the system, or even emails which can be used for providing facilitation to understand and access technology very easily by the students. 2, for teaching, learning, for individual learning, for group learning, for interaction and for community building, that the e-tutor must facilitate the students such. Most important is to develop metacognitive skills and therefore to provide support for development of metacognitive skills in each student or each learner. As I said earlier, the metacognitive skill means that each individual student has abilities as per one's own interest and cognitive structure and personality, has the ability to identify one's own skill and skills and put those skills into practice, into teaching and learning. And therefore, the online tutor, and this is very most important, and it's a very difficult task to identify each student's ability and facilitate the students to understand that and take it forward themselves and use for their own learning. The tutor would be simply a facilitator. For resources, should be designed such that there should not be plenty of resources, there must be most appropriate resources, and those resources must be facilitated by online tutor, because each individual student might ask the tutor separately that how best one could utilize resources, skip resources, access more resources, and so on and so forth. And finally, friends, that online counseling, which would include access to online resources, access to interaction, doing discussion forum, Google groups for instance, for discussion, and there should be coordination and management, all of these. So friends, what we have seen is that in online teaching learning, as you visualize, for design, development, delivery and evaluation of online learning, including student assessment, it is important that online tutor or the facilitator or the moderator may not be the program coordinator, but is a person who chips in while interacting with the students. Once the program is designed and developed, and once it is delivered, the online tutor takes up the responsibility. So online tutor interacts one-to-one with the online learners as also as a group. And the skills and competencies, as you would visualize, would certainly benefit from what we do in a face-to-face classroom interaction or even distance teaching. But what is important is there are specialized skills, including technology skills, that online tutor needs to possess to facilitate effective students' learning. So all the best to your online facilitation and for effective students' learning. Thank you very much.